Good morning, Vietnam. Good morning, everybody. How are we all doing on this fine Thursday? Arsenic. Arsenic, arsenic, arsenic. Roger Smith, a doctor of toxicology at the Dartmouth Geisel School of Medicine, describes arsenic as the king of poisons. Quote, "Since the very earliest of times, poisons have been used as a means for settling scores, instruments for personal advancement, and a means to execute criminals. The ancient Greeks and Romans, who could seldom agree on anything, were both masters of this practice, but of course, they selected different agents. The most commonly used toxin in Greece was the water hemlock, a plant in the carrot family, not to be confused with the evergreen conifer common in New England. Plato immortalized hemlock, which is said to be the most violently poisonous plant in the North Temperate Zone, in his description of the death of Socrates. In the rest of Europe, from the time of the Roman Empire through the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, arsenic was the king of poison. Mineral forms of arsenic were known as early as the 4th century BC, but the German scholar Albertus Magnus is usually accredited with the discovery of that element around 1250. Its ideal properties for sinister and evil uses include its lack of color, lack of odor, and lack of taste when mixed in with food or drink, plus its ubiquitous distribution in nature, which made it readily available to all classes of society. Symptoms of arsenic poisoning were difficult to detect since they could mimic food poisoning and other common disorders." End quote. Nowadays, we pretty much use arsenic for killing rodents. I can't think of much else. Today, I bring you the poisoning of Emile L'Angely. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. My sources for today come heavily from Crime Library and Murderpedia, along with just a touch more I'll put down below. Madeleine Smith, born in Scotland in 1835, was the first of 5 children to famed and wealthy Glasgow architect James Smith and his wife Elizabeth. According to the library, as a daughter of an upper-class family, Madeleine was educated from her earliest years in the proper manners and culture of her high society. Class separation was a strictly enforced concept in this mid-19th century Glasgow, and Madeleine, almost from birth, accompanied her parents to parties and other social occasions worthy of one of her status. When she came into her early teens, she traveled to London to attend Miss Alice Gorton's Academy for Young Ladies, where she was taught proper manners and took appropriate courses including piano lessons, walking, tatting, and other, quote, ladies' crafts. Walking. And then she returned to her family in the summer of 1853 when she turned 18 years old. Once again, she slipped into her proper role of an upper-class daughter. It was a docile and boring role that someone of Madeleine's temperament would never be satisfied with. And soon, she sought her own comfort. Madeleine first met Emile L'Angely. I know I'm butchering that last name, so we're just going to stick with Emile, a warehouse clerk 10 years her senior in the early spring of 1855. He was sweet, humble, and provided an escape from the tedious and proper lifestyle that she had to lead day after day. Quote, "Emile was born the first of 5 children to French parents on the Channel Islands in April of 1823. The family ran a seed merchant business out of their small house, and their business was confined to indigenous people or French speakers. Emile's father wanted to attract the business of the wealthy English visitors who spent time on the Channel Islands. With this goal in mind, Emile was sent off to be an apprentice to a neighboring nursery that catered to the British elite clientele. After some initial uneasiness, Emile became a hard worker and enhanced the basic English he had not learned at school, becoming quite fluent in both French and English. In 1842, as Emile was nearing the end of his apprenticeship, Sir Francis Mackenzie from Scotland took a liking to him and offered to take him back to work on his Scottish estates. The family agreed that this would be a good way to attract even more of the British business, and so Emile journeyed to a nursery in Edinburgh for training in the plants of Scotland, which sounds like a dream. 1 year later, however, Sir Francis died suddenly, and without enough money to return home, Emile was stranded in Edinburgh. Fortunately, the nursery where he had been training was pleased with his work and offered to keep him on full time. Over the next few years, he would continue to work as a nurseryman in Scotland, the Channel Islands, and France. Finally, in 1852, he moved to Glasgow, where his fate awaited him. It is not known when Emile first saw Madeleine in Glasgow, but she was attractive, and he sought an introduction to her by a mutual friend, as was the proper custom of that era. After several weeks of searching, he found a mutual acquaintance, and so in the early spring of 1855, Madeleine, the daughter of one of the most prominent families in Glasgow, met Emile. The meeting would soon end the life of one and forever haunt the life of another. End quote. Their first initial meeting went well, and afterwards, Madeleine wrote to him as a friend, seemingly with nothing more in mind. They continued to meet 2 or 3 more times in private over the following months and continued to exchange letters, one after another. Unfortunately, her elite alpha architect father found those letters and demanded her daughter terminate this friendship at once. Disappointed but aware of the social standings and pressures, she wrote to Emile saying they were no longer allowed to conspire. However, he would not have it. He knew the rules, but believed them to be rubbish and enlisted a friend's help named Miss Mary Perry. He convinced Madeleine to keep meeting him privately at Miss Mary Perry's house, where no one would be the wiser, and Madeleine agreed. She too truly didn't want this friendship to end so soon. But soon, this friendship became something much, much more. Quote, as time went on and their romance intensified, they started planning a wedding. And in June of 1856, they officially became lovers, an unthinkable taboo in Victorian times. Although no ceremony had yet been performed or no legal documents, they addressed each other as husband and wife, still, however, in secret, or at Miss Mary Perry's house. Emile kept all of Madeleine's letters, but firmly instructed her to burn his, probably to prevent anyone in the Smith household from accidentally coming across them. They continued to meet at Miss Perry's when they could, and occasionally would risk everything and meet late at night at Madeleine's house long after her family was asleep. Her parents, not knowing that the relationship with Emile had continued after it had been forbidden, began to search for a suitable husband for Madeleine. They settled on a 30-ish-year-old William Minnock, a wealthy merchant and neighbor of the Smiths. In September of 1856, William stayed with the Smith family at their summer house on the Clyde and spent much time with Madeleine. End quote. Now, Madeleine at this point is leading a double life. One life she chose herself, and the other chosen for her. Sadly, she knew this Minnock character would be a much better fit for her and her family. I mean, it was approved. Marrying anyone less would and will bring shame to her home. So she decided to appease her family and her time and accepted William's marriage proposal in early 1857, but now had to somehow let go of Emile. She wrote to him, quote, I trust your honor as a gentleman that you will not reveal anything that may have passed between us. I shall feel obliged by your bringing me my letters and likeness on Thursday evening at 7. Be at the area gate, and the, quote, housemaid will take the parcel from you. On Friday night, I shall send you all of your remaining letters, likeness, etc. I know you will never injure the character of one you have so fondly loved. No, Emile, I know you have honor and are a gentleman. What is past you will not mention. I know when I ask you that you will comply." End quote. Emile did not comply. Emile had heard rumors of this new engagement and was furious. He demanded she tell him the whole story, what was going on. Meanwhile, Madeline again pleaded for her letters back, but instead, Emile threatened to show her father everything. So one last time, Madeline agreed to meet Emile in person and find a way to finish this chapter of her life once and for all. According to Crime Library, what happens next is disputed by police, courts, and judges alike, but this is what we can gather for certain. At a supper with Miss Mary Perry on February 17th, Emile said that he had plans to meet with Madeline the night of the 19th. It is not known whether the two did meet on the 19th, but late that night, Emile suffered an attack of violent stomach pains. However, he recovered the following morning. On Saturday the 21st, 2 days later, Madeline went to a local apothecary and purchased a small amount of arsenic, which she said would be used to kill rats. As required by law, she signed the poison book at the time of this purchase. Arsenic at that time was sold with a coloring matter such as soot or indigo mixed into it to keep from being confused with flour, sugar, or other benign household substances. After a night out at unknown whereabouts, Emile returned to his lodgings early in the morning of February 22nd, suffering again from a more severe attack than the previous one. This one leaving him bedridden for 8 days. On March the 6th, Madeline again went to the apothecary and bought more arsenic. 3 days later, on the 9th, Emile had tea with Miss Mary Perry, and he said, as Perry would later testify, quote, "I cannot think why I was so unwell after getting that coffee and chocolate from her," end quote. He never said a name, but Perry understood that her was to mean Madeline. Emile then told Perry that he was so in love with her that, quote, "if she were to poison me, I would forgive her." Miss Perry scolded him for even thinking such a thing and asked what possible reason she would have for such action. Emile replied, "I don't know. Perhaps she might not be sorry to be rid of me." On March 17th, Madeline and her family returned from a trip, and the following day, she made her third purchase of arsenic. 1, 2, 3 in a month. Don't know how often you're supposed to purchase arsenic back then, but an average of 36 times per year seems dreadfully too much. On the 19th, Emile traveled to Bridge of Allen, about 5 miles north of Sterling, for a week-long vacation, although he returned unexpectedly the evening of March 22nd, telling his landlady that he had received a letter calling him back, but that he would return to Bridge of Allen the following day. He asked for the key to the front door, as he expected to be out late, but did not specify his destination and or plans for the evening. After midnight, early in the morning of the 23rd, his landlady awoke to a violent commotion at the front door and found Emile outside, doubled over in pain. 10 hours later, he was pronounced dead. The letter that had called him back was found in Emile's vest pocket after his death, and of course, it was from Madeline. Within the next few days, more of her letters were found in Emile's room and at his office. Madeline, however, said nothing regarding the mysterious death that was becoming the source of much local gossip. Thursday morning, March 26th, Madeline's sister Janet awoke to find her sister gone from the bed they shared, gone from their room, and gone from the entire house, end quote. To anyone other than her family, this looks beyond suspicious, and rumors began to swirl. Worried, William Minock, her fiancé, and his brother rushed to the train station in Greenock in hopes of finding his bride, while the rest of her family stayed behind in case she returned home. They caught up to Madeline just as she boarded a steamer boat set for Helensburgh. Helensburgh. Quote, sitting down next to her, William gently asked her why she had fled and caused such worry to her family and friends. She began to respond, but William told her to wait, as there was too many people about who might want to overhear. Once in the privacy of their large summer house, William again asked for the reason behind her leaving. Madeline cryptically told him that she was afraid her parents would be very upset at what she had done and promised to tell him more at a later time. In a long carriage ride, broken only by infrequent conversation, the three rode back home under candlelit windows and gas lamps of a Glasgow evening. End quote. On March 31st, based on the stacks of letters in Emil's residence, Madeline was arrested and charged with the murder of this once happy warehouse clerk. She didn't deny them being lovers or even considering marriage. She didn't deny her purchases of the arsenic, but she was steadfast in her innocence. She told police upon her arrest that the arsenic was for cosmetic use. Quote, she had mixed the arsenic with water and washed her arms and face with it, a use that she had learned while at school. She had lied to the apothecary about the arsenic's use for rat poisoning, she said, because she was too self-conscious to say that it was for her own complexion. She said that she, quote, never administered or caused to be administered arsenic to Emil L. And this I declare to be truth, end quote. Her trial became a national sensation. A young, beautiful woman from a wealthy family on stand for the murder of a man she was never supposed to fall in love with. According to Crime Library, because of this immense and sudden popular interest in the case, the trial was moved from Glasgow to Edinburgh and began on June 30th, 1857. Madeline was represented by a team including one of the greatest legal minds of the time, John Inglis. During the trial, people swarmed the courthouse to catch a glimpse of Madeline, and crowds lined the street every night as her carriage took her back to the East Jail of Edinburgh. The newspapers carried detailed descriptions of every aspect of the trial, and the proceedings became the chief topic of conversation throughout Scotland. The prosecution argued for the court to admit all of Madeline's letters and Emil's papers as evidence. John argued that her letters could be presented, but that a diary found in his room could not be admitted into evidence. The prosecution stated that the diary should be admitted as it contained notations that possibly indicated that Emil had seen Madeline right before his first and second attacks of the stomach illness. But with the author of the diary now dead, John argued, the written entries could not be questioned or properly cross-examined. The reasons were persuasive on both sides, but John ended up winning, and the diary was withheld from the jury. That alone may have changed the course of this entire trial. It continued for 9 days, and many witnesses, including Madeline's sister, Janet, who testified that she did not recall Madeline ever getting out of bed the night of March 22nd, and even William Minnock, who had quickly withdrawn his marriage proposal, took the stand. The prosecution argued that Madeline had already lied at least once about the real purpose of the arsenic to the apothecary, and stated that Emil's refusal to return her letters and end the affair was motive enough for killing him. John countered by saying that nobody could solidly disprove Madeline's claim that she had not seen Emil in the 3 weeks before his death. And, John pointed out, Emil had his first attack 2 days before Madeline's first recorded purchase of arsenic. But then again, she could have had arsenic from years ago, poisoned him once, ran out, needed to get more arsenic for the second attack. The prosecution and the defense both argued brilliantly, but due primarily to the fact that it could not be shown that Madeline and Emil had actually seen each other before any of his 3 attacks, the jury deliberated for only 30 minutes on July 9th, and they reached a verdict of, quote, not proven. A unique verdict in Scotland that signifies that the accused was not found innocent, but the prosecution had not made a strong enough case to convict. And Madeline went free that afternoon. End quote. Only 30 minutes? The case of the century and the jurors are like, we don't know either. What truly happened to Emile will forever remain a mystery. The truth died with those few people decades and decades ago. Since 1857, there have been two strong theories. One, Emile killed himself, and two, Madeleine killed Emile. But if Emile killed himself with his own arsenic, what did Madeleine do with the arsenic she purchased? None of her biographers, even those who were clearly pro-Madeleine, believe that she actually used it as a cosmetic arsenic wash, as she stated in her official declaration. Or, if Emile killed himself with his own arsenic, how did he know that Madeleine was, coincidentally, buying the exact same poison? On the other hand, if Madeleine was secretly poisoning Emile over the course of several weeks, why did she make her arsenic purchases so blatantly and in public? She even brought an eyewitness with her to one of those said purchases. If Emile suspected that he was being poisoned by Madeleine, as several trial witnesses testified, why did he continue to take the poisonous beverages or treats from Madeleine? Plus, even with Emile dead, she knew that the highly damning evidence, her letters to him, were still in existence and were bound to be discovered. Yet she made no attempt to retrieve the letters from his rented room or office. Quote, and so today, Miss Madeleine Smith has taken on a folkloric mystique akin to that of Lizzie Borden. The old did she or didn't she debate continues, and the doubt of her innocence even reached her legal defender, John Inglis. He was once asked at a dinner party if he truly believed that Madeleine was innocent of the murder charge. After a thoughtful pause, he said simply that he would, quote, rather have danced with her than drank with her, end quote. Womp womp, she did it. After her official, not proven verdict, the notoriety of the case pushed her and her family outside Scotland, forced to start anew in a land where they may not be recognized so frequently. Crime Library reported that Madeleine eventually moved to London and married George Wardle, a draftsman and the business manager of the artist William Morris. She continued to remain silent about the trial and her accused crime, although newspapers and curiosity seekers hounded her for years. After many years of marriage and 2 children, Madeleine and George separated, and her trail after this divorce from George is murky. Wild rumors of her living or dying in places such as Australia and France appear from time to time in various newspapers. And that, my friends, is the mysterious story of Madeleine Smith and the poisoning of Emile L'Angelaire. A bit less bloody than usual today, but I thought it was a fun story, especially how she gets away with murder at the end. That was a good twist. I hope you all enjoyed it, of course. Thank you for listening in. Truly appreciate each and every one of your eardrums. Stick around a bit longer for a bonus story. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you. My brother's in England, the sun is out, and I have the whole frickin' apartment to myself. I don't think I've ever been this relaxed while recording before. Our bonus story today is titled, Married Man Accused of Killing Girlfriend, written by Samira Sadiq. Quote, a Michigan man has been charged with murder after a fisherman found the body of the man's girlfriend with her toes sticking out of a bag near a river. Flint City police officers recovered the body of Christina Elizabeth Barber, 48 years old, near the Flint River in Michigan on March 4th. Authorities who were already investigating Barber's disappearance later arrested her boyfriend, Christopher Aston Moultrie, who's 34, in connection with their death. Moultrie, who is married to another woman, has been charged with first-degree premeditated murder, domestic violence, evidence tampering, and concealing a death. On March 2nd, a co-worker of Barbara's requested a welfare check because she had not been answering her phone or been to work in a week. The following day, local police responded to a motel in Flint where they found several bloodied items in a room that was rented by Barbara. At the scene, outside of the motel room, police recovered a comforter lying on the ground soaked in what appeared to be blood. Inside the motel room, police found a blood-stained mattress with cat litter on it and cat litter strewn all over the floor, as well as blood-stained sheets next to the bed, bloodstains on the floor, and bloodstains on the wall. On March 4th, police found Barbara's body after a 911 call was made by a person just about to go fishing. The witness found a black garbage bag with what appeared to be toes sticking out of the bag. During their investigation, Genesee police reviewed security footage from the motel and saw Barbara and Moultrie entering the motel room on February 28th. On February 29th, Moultrie is allegedly seen coming out of the room with what appears to be a body in a plastic bag in a fireman's carry and puts it in the bed of his truck. Miss Barbara would never be seen alive again. A GoFundMe has been set up by her daughter to help the family with funeral expenses. Barbara was unmarried and had 7 adult children. Co-workers told investigators that Barbara and Moultrie were in a difficult, tumultuous relationship that she was trying to leave at the time. He added that they also claimed Moultrie had threatened to kill her several times before. Moultrie's wife has been cooperating with the investigation and is not a suspect herself. He was arraigned on Friday and is currently being held without bond. End quote. And then the article goes on to say, which I think is important to add, if you are experiencing domestic violence, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or go to thehotline.org. All the calls are toll-free, confidential, available 24/7 in over 170 languages, all of which I cannot speak. All right. Well, normally I write in conclusion, blah, 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 so I have something to say at the end so I don't just drone on. But I didn't, so I hope you enjoyed the stories today. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you guys next Monday. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you.